Good evening and welcome to the January 29th, 2015 Making Sense Project webinar for Pennsylvania teachers on financial literacy and economic education. We're so pleased to have you with us this evening. Tonight's agenda includes a webinar overview and instructions by myself, Hilary Hunt, followed by a presentation on borrowing basics by Judge Mary France, the hands-on banking program by Mark Rich, and then I'll wrap things up with some information on our new model curriculum. The Making Sense webinars are part of an overall financial education and economic education program that's a partnership between the Pennsylvania Department of Education and Penn State University. With this program, we attempt to offer curriculum resources, content knowledge, and professional information. The content knowledge tonight will focus on borrowing basics. The curriculum resource this evening that we're featuring is the hands-on banking program, and I'll be talking about our Making Sense model curriculum for professional information. I'd like to thank our project partners, Sally Flaherty with the Pennsylvania Department of Education, as well as Dr. Kathy Bowen, professor at Penn State University. And with that, I'd like to welcome our first presenter. Judge Mary France is a judge with the U.S. Bankruptcy Court of the Middle District of Pennsylvania. And Judge France, I am turning things over to you.
Okay, thanks, Hilary, and welcome to everyone. I first need to make the usual disclaimers. I am, as a bankruptcy judge, I'm a member of the federal court, and nothing that I say should be interpreted as legal advice or representations of the courts itself. These are all my personal views on the issue today. As Hilary said, in my day job, I'm a bankruptcy judge, but because of my experiences in this role, I've also become an advocate for financial literacy. In bankruptcy, we have people who are unfortunate, people who've made unwise decisions, and also people who are both unfortunate and have made unwise decisions. I really can't do much about people when they get to me and have had to file bankruptcy. And sometimes that's frustrating. So one way I've tried to direct some of my efforts is to try to support those of you who are working to make the next generation more financially literate. And that's why I'm here this evening. Financial illiteracy is dangerous. Americans who are less financially literate are less likely to invest wisely, less likely to save and plan for the future, more likely to rely on high-cost borrowing services, and more likely to have difficulty navigating today's complex financial system. Financial education is especially important for students from low-income families. In 2013, the National Bureau of Economic Research did a study of 26,000 people, a large study. 34% of the 18 to 34-year-olds in the survey engaged in high-cost borrowing. These are using services such as payday lenders. And 43% of individuals who had only a high school diploma, almost half or close to half, had used these types of services. High-cost borrowing correlates positively with very low levels of financial literacy. From my experience, there are 4 keys to the wise use of credit, and those should be on the screen. First, it's important to learn basic credit concepts and terms that are common in most financial agreements. Second, information by itself is not enough. Students need to develop analytical and problem-solving skills that enable them to weigh options and make logical decisions. Third, they need to know how to locate the most reliable and unbiased sources of information. There's a lot of misinformation out there. And finally, they need to feel that this stuff matters, that having personal financial goals is important. I'm sure those of you listening know all of these things, but as someone who's not an educator but who deals with people who have financial problems, I've certainly found that these are the keys that often people who file bankruptcy don't have. So the first key, learning basic credit concepts. Just as an example of the problem, I have been amazed at the number of bankruptcy debtors that do not understand the time value of money and how that relates to the concept of interest, or they don't understand the difference between a debit card and a credit card, and sometimes with disastrous results. Familiarity with different credit terms is imperative. For example, understanding how an installment loan for a car is different from revolving credit that you use when you're using a credit card. A car payment can be plugged into a budget and it pretty much stays the same for the duration of the loan in most cases. A credit card payment, though, can vary and it can be much more disruptive to a budget. Also important is the concept of secured versus unsecured credit and the fact that missed payments can result in the loss of loan collateral on a secured loan. I know it's very common for those who teach financial education that there are two big concepts that students need to understand, and that's the significance of their credit reports, including why it's important to monitor the report, and their credit scores. And I want to reinforce that concept as well. A clean credit report that demonstrates an ability to handle credit should be everyone's goal, whether they are in the market to get a new extension of credit or not, because employers and landlords can check credit reports. They have an impact on many aspects of a person's life beyond getting a loan. As you'll see on the slide, there are 4 categories of information that are included in a credit report. Personal information, the credit history, inquiries, and these are broken out into both soft and hard inquiries. Hard inquiries are those in which you have requested credit and thus they're more extensive than a soft inquiry, which may be from an employer or a landlord. Less information is included in those, and they really have no effect on your credit score. In addition, there are 3 categories of publicly available information on the credit report, plus accounts reported in collection by debt collectors. The publicly available information includes civil judgments, tax liens, and bankruptcy filings. But information on a credit report is not always correct. Consumer Reports, in fact, recently reported that 20% of individuals who checked their credit reports found errors. So it's important to review them at least annually and to dispute incorrect information. And as most of you know, a free credit report is available from each of the 3 reporting agencies once a year through annualcreditreport.com. Students also need to understand that while credit reports affect your credit score, a credit report is history, and a credit score is a snapshot of your creditworthiness at a particular point in time. The most commonly used credit score is the FICO score. The components of this score are described on the slide. Another score being used by lenders more so recently is Vantage Score, which has been developed by the 3 credit reporting agencies. There are many others that offer free online credit reports, and one example is the website Credit Karma. but they generally are not FICO scores, these will give an approximation of your credit score, but they're not the one that a lender is going to be using to make a decision on whether to extend credit. Recently, Discover Card, well, actually about 2 years ago, Discover Card started making FICO scores available to its customers. Now Bank of America, Ally, and JP Morgan have also agreed to make them available to their cardholders. I see this as a trend in which eventually people will be able to get their FICO scores free through one source or another. Students also need to understand that while credit reports affect your credit score, I'm sorry, I'm going over this again. There are several basic borrowing principles that apply regardless of what type of credit you're using. How well you follow these principles can impact your credit score and how you are viewed by potential lenders. These are 5 strategies or very common approaches that make it easier to cope with existing credit obligations and allow you to develop the potential to obtain credit when it's needed. And it's amazing how many people do not follow these maxims. They're rather straightforward. Pay your bills on time. Verify information in your credit report. Don't apply for credit you don't need. Don't apply for a lot of credit over a short period of time, and don't max out available credit. The last 3 in particular can adversely affect your credit score. Learning basic credit concepts, though, is not enough. You have to know how to apply them. Whether students want to or not, they'll soon need to apply what they know about personal finance in real-world situations. Students need to practice making choices about credit, and I'm sure that's part of what financial education is all about, learning how to, practicing so you know how to make those decisions when you have to in the future. When one is deciding whether to borrow and whether they need credit, they should think about, do I need a product right now? Can I pay cash or do I need credit? How much more will it cost me if I use credit? How much additional cost of credit, how does the additional cost of credit affect my budget? Usually credit isn't free. How is that going to cut into my budget? And how will using credit now affect my ability to get credit at a later time? One common mistake that bankruptcy debtors who come before me often make is they don't read their credit agreements. I've had times when debtors purchased jewelry, and they were shocked to find out that the loan to purchase the jewelry was a secured loan, that the lender had taken the jeweler had taken a security agreement in the jewelry, and that when they filed for bankruptcy, they couldn't simply discharge that debt without paying for the value of the jewelry. All borrowers, including students, need to learn to read credit agreements and to obtain explanation for terms they don't understand before they sign them. The third key is how to locate sources of reliable, unbiased information. Students, unfortunately, today get a lot of their information through sources like Facebook, and they may find that their friends are probably not the best financial advisors. I'm sure that, well, you're coping on a daily basis on the fact that the current generation really has different learning styles, and I'm sure you're structuring your lessons and your methods of teaching to reflect that. The fact that they prefer visual learning, acquire small bits of data at a time, and are interested in developing solutions collaboratively. But one change or a couple of changes that are particularly important in regard to financial education is as compared to what they call millennials. Students today, studies have shown, are really more aware of the reality of scarcity and are more interested in achieving financial security. That's not a mystery since they grew up or have been growing up during a recession. These last 2 points are particularly valuable attributes to work with when you're trying to instill in students the importance of becoming financially literate. One of the benefits of living in the internet age is there's a lot of information out there. But the problem is a lot of that information is unreliable or is biased. For example, one of the major scams following the financial collapse in 2008 was the explosion in these credit repair businesses. You couldn't watch television or get on the internet without hearing about them. Generally, these are services that take money but don't do much for the person who's paid for their services. Over the last 5 or 6 years, I saw numerous cases where people had tried using credit repair services to straighten things out before they eventually had to file for bankruptcy and were even further behind. If you can't clear up a mistake in your credit report by yourself or work out repayment agreements with your creditors directly, which isn't always easy, you should contact a reputable credit counseling agency or an attorney. I think schools can really, teachers can really be important here to help prepare students by teaching them to sift or giving them suggestions on how to sift through information to find those tools, that information that is reliable and unbiased. In my presentation materials, I have included some government and nonprofit sites that I found to be useful on financial education topics. And as I indicated at the beginning, I'm not an expert in this area, and these are simply ones that I have found to be reliable and useful in working with people that I've had to work with who are dealing with financial issues. My Money is sponsored by the Federal Financial Literacy and Education Commission, which is made up of more than 20 federal entities that are involved in financial education. Smart About Money is another nonprofit sponsored site by the National Endowment for Financial Education, and I'm sure all of you are familiar with Jumpstart. One that I particularly have found helpful in terms of the math type skills is 360 Financial Literacy, which is a site sponsored by the American Institute of CPAs. And then they have a site that's directed more at younger persons called Feed the Pig, which is a pretty nifty site. Obviously, Federal Reserve Education is the Federal Reserve site and includes a variety of topics on finance, including personal finance. And the last one on the left there is extension.org, which is an internet-based educational network, and one of its partners is Penn State. There are also several credit union and bank sponsored sites, and you're going to be hearing about Wells Fargo's site later, that provide useful, reliable information on a variety of financial topics. The site creditcards.com that's on my list is very helpful for a calculator that helps you compare credit card options. But like many other sites that perform similar services, you have to keep in mind that they work with and are compensated by their partners. I think the information is useful, but there sometimes are limitations as to what they include on the site. And I guess one of the best things is many of these sites are now on social media, which make them an attractive resource for students because that's the way they get information. The final key to the wise use of credit probably is the most difficult, and I'm sure I'm not telling you anything you don't know, and that's instilling in students a desire to develop their own personal financial goals. It only gets harder as they become adults. Good credit requires planning. Students have a wide variety of wants and needs. They also should be setting goals such as getting a job after graduation or going to college. Many have the goal of buying a car. Having a variety of goals requires them to make choices and to set priorities. The younger generation will have greater financial success if they learn to think about the issues, the broad issues that are up there before they enter into borrowing agreements. What is your overall goal? Do I need money to meet this goal? And then where am I going to get it? There are a lot of options out there, and it's important to plan for these things and not do them on impulse. Having sort of gone through, I guess, these keys, what I consider the keys to wise use of credit, I want to focus now with my remaining time on the major credit choices that young borrowers face. And there are issues that I see in cases that are filed by persons, not teenagers, of course, but persons in their 20s and early 30s. The one thing that has changed somewhat over the last decade is that credit and obtaining credit is not as attractive as it was in the 1990s and the early 21st century. And that dampening down of a desire for credit is a good thing and a realistic thing. But it's unlikely that the use of credit is going to continue to stay as low as it has been, especially as the economy improves. It's interesting that Generation Z seems less enamored with credit than millennials, and they approach it more cautiously, but they continue to need to know how to use credit wisely as a survival skill, because eventually they will. Young borrowers are involved in credit primarily in 4 forms: student loans, auto loans, credit cards, and alternative financial services, and I'll discuss each one in turn. The gateway to credit for most people is a credit card. Since the 2009 Act restricted issuing credit cards to anyone under 21 in most circumstances, the card that young people start using often is not theirs alone. This is a good teaching opportunity for parents. If they choose to have their students listed as an authorized user, they can then monitor the monthly payments. Or if they decide to co-sign on credit. Once you decide to get a credit card, you need to shop for one. Many of the considerations on borrowing I mentioned earlier apply. There are lots of websites that will tell you what is the best credit card. I think you can find a website for the best anything you want to think of. But these should be used with caution. These sites generally are controlled indirectly, if not directly, by credit card companies. That doesn't mean that they should be ignored, but they need to be approached cautiously. Some of the more reliable and transparent sites I've listed on the slide. Deciding which credit card to apply for requires consideration both of personal spending habits and the term of the card. If you pay the balance off each month, the APR is not that significant, but the length of the grace period and the annual fee will be. However, most young borrowers do carry a balance, so the interest rate and applicable fees and charges are important. Some questions they should be considering when they're choosing a credit card is, can I pay my bill in full each month? What's the interest rate and when can it change? Are they offering me a teaser rate? What's the credit limit? What are the possible fees and penalties? And does the card offer rewards that I'll actually use? If one does not have a good credit history or virtually no credit history, maybe a secured card is an option. A secured card, though, is more costly than an unsecured card and really should be only used to build credit. Credit cards are not inherently good or bad, even though you'll find a lot of websites that will tell you they're bad. Under no condition should you ever have one. Cut them all up. It's really how they're used. And some of the pros of a credit card are they help you build a credit history, raise your credit score, makes it a lot easier to buy merchandise online, and your liability can be limited with using a credit card. On the con side, it does create a tendency to overspend because you don't have that limitation of there's not enough cash in my wallet. And it requires good budgeting habits. Further, you may incur interest if you don't pay it off every month. But there are other pros. You may be able to earn rewards. It may help you keep track of your expenditures and provide, it certainly is valuable in that it provides leverage if you need to dispute a defective product. That's why for large purchases a credit card is so valuable. And it certainly makes travel easier. On the other hand, you may incur late charges over the limit, the fees. Your credit score may be hurt if you misuse the card. And it also can lead to snowballing debt, where you just add debt on your rolling interest into principal, and eventually you're paying interest on interest. So if students use a credit card, what are some general rules they should learn to follow? Develop a budget and use it. Keep track of purchases and review statements. Try to pay the bill off every month. I don't think I can say that enough times. Pay the bill on time. They don't realize how important that is often and what the consequences are of missing a payment. Stay well below the credit limit. It really reflects badly on your credit report if you're close to your credit limit. And of course, now with concerns about identity theft, you need to guard your credit card information. Next to credit cards, the most likely credit a young person will apply for is to buy a car. A car purchase is, of course, an installment loan rather than revolving credit. Even before a car is purchased, though, other costs that accompany the ownership of a vehicle should be considered in addition to the cost of the car. In particular, gas, insurance, maintenance costs. A newer, more expensive car may be a better deal than a clunker if it has new tires, uses less gas, and is under warranty. Before a buyer goes into the dealer's showroom, a number of issues should be considered. Often, a young adult has not established a credit history. Therefore, he's going to need a co-signer on the loan who does have good credit. They need to know whether someone is willing to co-sign the loan before they start the process of purchasing the car. Second, they need to know their credit score so they understand how much leverage they're going to have in negotiations. If you have a low credit score, you have very little leverage. if any. And it may seriously limit your borrowing options. The down payment, of course, excuse me, need to go back. Down payment, of course, is also important. It will determine how much has to be financed. So it's important to know what amount is available going in. The larger the down payment, the better. They also need to think about who will lend them the money. Maybe a family member or a bank or a credit union is an alternative to dealer financing that would be more attractive. A car buyer may be able to strike a better deal if they have independent financing arranged before they discuss the purchase price with the dealer. In any event, and this is probably the most important point, although a lot of these are important, but when a buyer selects a vehicle, he or she should negotiate on the basis of price and not the amount of the monthly payment. As with credit cards, it pays to shop for car financing. Buyers can compare a variety of offers available through websites like bankrate.com, and they can check out banks and credit unions. It's helpful to have this independent financing available when you go into the dealer, but it's also good to listen to the dealer's offer to compare options. It's also important to, when you have these various options presented, to calculate the net financial return of the various incentives that are being offered by the dealer. Ultimately, it's important to make sure the terms and conditions of the purchase agreement and the financing, that you understand both and that you can manage the debt. The next topic is student loans, and this is an incredibly hot topic right now. Student loans have become a huge segment of the overall debt load carried by young people and is completely reshaping the lives, the financial lives of Generation Z. Here are just a couple of important trends to note. Student loan debt exceeds all household debt except mortgages. 25-year-olds with student loan debt increased from 25% of those in that age group in 2003 to 43% in 2012. And just this week, an article came out in the Wall Street Journal in which the Federal Reserve and Experian had indicated that now roughly 70% of recent graduates have student loan debt. The class of 2014, the average borrower left with an average load of $33,000. So this is becoming a reality for many young people, that they are going to be carrying the burden of student loan debt for some time. This graph sort of illustrates the impact of carrying that student loan debt on individuals up into their time they're 30. The graph gives a range of credit scores, if you look on the left, from 610 to 660. It shows how credit scores of 4 age groups changed between the years 2003 and 2012. Students with no student loan debt are in red, and students with loan debt are in blue. 25-year-olds are the solid lines and 30-year-olds are the dotted lines. Look at the bottom 2 lines showing 25-year-olds. Between 2003 and 2009, the credit scores of 25-year-olds without student loan debt and those with student loan debt was less than 10 points. But the difference between the two groups in 2012 jumped to 15 points. The differences are even more dramatic for 30-year-olds if they still have student loan debt at that point in their lives. Those who continued to be saddled with student loan debt in 2012 had credit scores 25 points lower than 30-year-olds without student loan debt. This table further supports the issue and shows that because the rising cost of post-secondary education, more students are finding it necessary to finance it. Their parents can't give them enough money, they can't work enough to be able to pay for post-secondary education. The amount of student loan debt being carried by students has a profound impact on other financial decisions. It makes it harder for them to start a business after graduation. It delays first home purchases and purchases of other durable goods such as car, furniture, and appliances. And it creates a greater likelihood that at some point they will default on other debt. Therefore, when students are taught about borrowing, they need to think about what their post-secondary education may cost them. Any borrowing, they need to think about that. And whether there are alternatives to borrowing, such as working part-time, and what the chances are that they're going to be able to get a job in their chosen field after they've obtained their education. The final types of loans that I want to address briefly, they're not a large percentage of the loans that individuals in this group overall enter into, but they are probably some of the most problematic for particularly low-income individuals. Alternative financial services, what are they? They're, as I mentioned earlier, payday loans, where individuals get a short-term loan that they have to pay off when they get their check and from their employer. These loans have been heavily criticized because the interest charges seem small when they're listed in absolute dollar numbers, but when they're calculated as an APR, they can be huge, numbers in the neighborhood of 400% APR. And there's always the danger that the loan won't be paid in full during the pay cycle, and the charges will continue to mount when the loan is rolled over. For some individuals, they're the only way to keep the lights on, but they're a bad deal. Car title loans are often taken out on vehicles that are owned free and clear. These are also high interest rate loans that can result in the loss of a vehicle if there's a default, a vehicle that otherwise didn't have a lien on it. Rent to own, tax anticipation loans similarly are loans in which with electronic filing now, there's really very few times when you should need to have a tax anticipation loan. They're really something that I think is becoming more passé as people are filing online. Rent to own, which is not technically borrowing, allows someone to obtain furniture and appliances through a lease at a lower monthly rate than they can obtain financing a purchase from a retailer. The problem is in the long run they pay more because the price of the merchandise is ridiculously inflated above market rate. Although there's always the consideration that you may be paying almost as much if you go to a retail store and you charge a purchase and you only pay the minimum balance for a long period of time. So both of these strategies are ill-advised and should be avoided wherever possible. The last item on this list is not really a high interest rate loan, but it's a new animal that's becoming more common, more frequently used for small loans. It's very popular with small businesses, peer-to-peer loans. There's really someone who matches the lenders and borrowers. They work as an intermediary on the internet, and the interest rates are typically competitive, but since you don't know really who you're dealing with, you need to be careful about upfront fees on these types of loans. These alternative loans, one of the things that individuals really need to think about is, and learn that this is part of the analysis anytime you make a lending decision, what is the true cost of the loan? And do I have any other options? And how much am I exposing property, such as with a car title loan, to loss if I use this type of lending device? Well, I appreciate the opportunity to talk with you today about my perspectives on borrowing and what I see from the vantage point of a bankruptcy judge. And I started my presentation with some thoughts by one of our the former chair of the Federal Reserve, Ben Bernanke, and I'm closing with the thoughts of another former Fed chair, both of whom have emphasized that improving financial education is absolutely critical, not only to the individuals involved, but to our country's financial health. Having an adequate background in credit concepts, knowing how to locate reliable sources of information, developing good problem solving and decision making skills, and developing your own personal financial goals can really help students build a brighter financial future for themselves and really strengthen our financial system. I thank you for your attention, and I'll turn it back to Hilary to see if there are any questions.
Thank you so very much, Judge France. If anybody has any questions, I'd welcome you, the opportunity for you to type those into the question bar, and I'll be happy to present those to Judge France. I haven't seen any come in yet, but that was very informative. I know that I always learn something every time that Judge France shares information with us. Well, Judge France, I'm not seeing anybody. You must have covered it so well that they're a quiet group tonight. We're getting some thank yous coming in, but no significant questions here. So we thank you for your time. And Judge France, I'm just going to ask you: are you seeing my my slides now in the center of your screen?
Yes, I am.
Okay, very good.
I
All
am
right.
now. Mm-hmm.
All right. Well, thank you so much. We appreciate your
Sure.
participation this evening.
Happy to do it, and the best to all of you who are out there working in this very important field. I really wish you well and great success, and I hope you reduce my filing numbers. So, thank you.
That'll be our long-term goal, that's for sure.
That's great. Thank you.
Yes, thank you. I'm going to turn things over now to our next presenter. Next up on the agenda, we have Mark Rich from Wells Fargo here to talk to us today about the hands-on banking program. So, Rich, are you there? Or, excuse me, Mark, are you there?
Hilary, I am.
All right, very good. I am going to switch things over to you here in just a moment.
Great, thank you. And thank you for having me on today's call, and thank you to Judge France for that presentation. I agree with you, Hilary. I thought that was a fantastic presentation, and had a lot of good information in there. Wells Fargo is committed to financial education, and for more than 160 years, Wells Fargo has prided what's right for our customers, and it's at the center of everything that we do as part of our company's vision and values. And one of the ways that we advocate for our customers' best interests is with the Hands-On Banking program, and this is our free, non-branded, non-commercial financial education program. It helps us serve as a resource to help our customers and those in our communities that we serve to develop the skills that we all need to succeed financially. The Hands-On Banking program was launched over 10 years ago, and it wasn't created by bankers with the intent to sell. It was created by educators with the intent to educate. Wells Fargo participates with the American Bankers Association around 2 annual campaigns, which you might be familiar with. One is in April called Teach Children to Save, and the other is in October called Get Smart About Credit. And between those 2 campaigns, we now have around 3,000 unique Wells Fargo team members that teach savings and credit to over 130,000 participants of all ages every year. But the Hands-On Banking program is more than that. As I mentioned, it is a free program, and it's available to anybody across the world that has internet access at www.handsonbanking.org. Last year, we had over 100 different countries from across the globe visit our site. We also have 2 other delivery channels besides the online version. We do have the Hands-On Banking program available via CD-ROM if somebody wanted to use the digital delivery of the program but did not have access to the internet where they were doing their education. And then we also have it available in printed instructional guides in case you don't have technology in your classroom or you just rather teach off traditional paper. The key piece to all 3 of these delivery channels is the information is identical. The only thing that varies is the technology used to deliver the information to your students. Where we are now is at handsonbanking.org. You can see that on the right-hand side, we do see the 7 different curriculum that Hands-On Banking encompasses. We have a curriculum for kids, which to us, when we created it, was 4th and 5th grade. Teens was 6th, 7th, and 8th grade. Young adults was 9th grade through college, so 20, 21, 22, somewhere in that age. And then adults would be everybody college-aged and above. And then we have a section for entrepreneurship, seniors, and U.S. military. And I know that we only have teachers on the call today, but what we try to do is create a program that can help all members of the family around financial education. So hopefully your students go home and they show their parents the website handsonbanking.org. And now as the students are learning about financial education, the parents can refresh their knowledge around this subject or maybe even learn more around financial education on their own. And we can bring this topic into the homes to where families are beginning to talk about this, and financial education and money isn't the taboo subject that families just don't talk about. Some things I'd like to point out about the Hands-On Banking program is it is a bilingual program. In the top right, we do have a toggle that will switch between English and Spanish. And when we click on this, the entire program will translate immediately to the other language. This toggle can happen at any point within the program. It doesn't have to happen on this home page. So if the Hands-On Banking program is being used in a second language class, not only is that student learning the other language, but they're also learning about financial education. The Hands-On Banking program is a standards-based program. If we go under resources, you'll see that we do have a section here called standards. If I click this, it will show the standards based on Jumpstart and National Council for Economic Education and some of the other standard-based organizations. We scroll down to select our state It will then open up a PDF to show how the hands-on banking program aligns with our state standards. Again, when we created this program, the intent was to show it as an educational tool and not a sales tool. So we used this document to help show that that's what has been our guiding principle with the creation of the program. Right now, these are standard-based, but we are in the works of getting them core-based, and we should have that hopefully in the next quarter, maybe 2 quarters, to show how the hands-on banking program aligns with core standards. The hands-on banking program is also mobile and tablet friendly. Right now, we're seeing the PC version of the program because I'm accessing it from my computer. But if you or your students or their families access the hands-on banking program from their smart device or from their tablet, the mobile version of the program would load automatically, and it is adjusted for screen size. We know that there are many students that don't access the internet any other way but their phones, so we wanted to make sure that if they did so, they could access our program. Also, we know in many households, the only source of internet in that household is through their smartphone or their tablet. As I mentioned earlier, the hands-on banking program is available in printed guides as well. Again, under resources, then instructional guides. It will show us PDF versions of the hands-on banking program for kids through entrepreneurs. We don't have the printed versions for military or seniors at this time, only kids through the entrepreneurship program. With the young adults, because it is such a large curriculum, you can download just the specific area within the young adult program if that's what you want, or you can download the entire guide. As we've been speaking about credit tonight, if I open up All About Credit, you'll see that it's going to give us a cover page. It's going to welcome us to the program. It will show us the different icons that will be used through this guide so we know if we're doing an activity, a discussion, a handout, etc. It will give me a topic overview of the All About Credit topic, and it will show me the lessons that are available within that is Before You Borrow, Credit Basics, your credit score, your credit report, credit cards, loans, and dealing with debt. So it has many of the same things that Judge France just talked to us about. If you wanted to apply that and work with your students on those topics, they can all be found within the All About Credit topic within Hands-on Banking. So we scroll down, we'll see that there is a table of contents that will show us how to get to each one of these breakouts within the program. And what's important to note here is the hands-on banking program is a modular-based curriculum. So we don't have to go in any order. You can go in and out of topics and in and out of lessons the best way that it suits what you're trying to teach your students as you work with them around financial education. So if I just want to go to the first one, Before You Borrow, we'll see that it starts on page 9. As I scroll down, it will then show me what are the learning objectives for Before You Borrow. What's the basic information that I'd like the students to know by the time this portion of the class is complete. It will give us a tip around some basic vocabulary. The next page then shows me a credit quiz that we can do with the kids, and it tells me to write all the credit terms on a chalkboard, whiteboard, smartboard, or a piece of paper and divide your class into groups. And then you can go through this exercise with your students. The next page is the summary of this particular Before You Borrow lesson, and it will show me some key points that we're hopeful that your students know before we go on to the next credit lesson. So we've tried to lay out our instructional guides for everything that you as the instructor would need and everything your students would need. And wherever it's your copy, we're going to put instructor's copy. Anything that's for your students, we just leave blank. So theirs will look like yours. It just won't have the answers with it. So here we have the 5 C's of credit. Your page is filled out with the answers. Their page looks just like yours, just they're going to tell you whether it's character, capacity, capital, collateral, or conditions. If we go back to the Hands-on Banking homepage, we can then hit this icon. This icon will always take us back to the main www.handsonbanking.org. If we take a moment, let's go into the digital delivery of young adults, and we'll see that from a content standpoint, it's the same. Just from an interactive standpoint, it allows another voice in the room. We've usually been with them for a semester, and it's always good to get a pseudo guest speaker in the room, and Hands-on Banking can play that role.
Does it include a car, a college education, maybe a new place to live? Will your job pay you enough? Will you save enough? Will you be able to borrow money and pay it back on time? How will money be a part of your future? Learning to manage money wisely will help you reach your financial goals. Take charge of your future now.
So that introduction could be played or skipped, as you saw. I played it here because it's the first time for us to go through the Young Adults Hands-on Banking program. But you'll see that the topics look just like they did with the instructor's guide. With young adults, we're going to talk to them about how to get started, how to earn money, spending smart, how to save, invest, and build wealth, all about credit, and then school and money, which is higher education, paying for it, and if there's a benefit to that. If we look at our dashboard here, you'll see that I still have my English-Spanish toggle at the top right. I can mute my sound on and off. This is often beneficial if I'm in a computer lab setting where I just want my computer to be the main sound of that presentation. This course index will always bring us back to this page, so if I want to get to a different topic than the topic that I'm in, I can hit course index to get into that other topic. If we look at the bottom here, I do have a tools tab. This tools tab will bring up basic calculator, time value, money type formulas, and then I do have a virtual ATM machine. This virtual ATM machine, we can grab our card, we can put it in our ATM machine, we can select any 4-digit code, and then we can teach our students what these machines that they see on the corners are, what the machines that they see at the grocery stores are, and how they're actually watching the individuals at those ATMs practice banking, and they aren't just magic machines that spit out money anytime their parents need some, or anytime those kids want something and they ask their parents to buy it. But we can do the same things on our virtual machine as those real ATM machines. We have a tab for library articles. These are 80 to 85 different library articles sorted on topics. Right now they're in alphabetical order, but I can also click this link to view all the documents sorted by topic. Here you'll see that these are the same topics that we had on the previous page. If I select one of these topics, all about credit, you'll see that every library article down below deals with the subject of credit. These are generally 1 to 5 page documents that you can use in conjunction with what you're teaching your students or as standalone teaching materials. And if I hit course index, it will take me back to the main topic homepage. If we go into one of these classes, and let's go ahead and open All About Credit.
Credit can help you, but it comes with responsibility. Click a lesson to see how credit works, how to build your own credit, and how to avoid or deal with taking on too much debt.
So we have a small introduction then that we can either skip or we can listen to. If we want to go into one of these classes, and let's look at Before You Borrow, since that's where we were with the printed materials as well, we'll see that some of these presentations have coaches that come to introduce the topic, and sometimes we just kick off into the topic. And when I'm doing presentations with hands-on banking, especially with this digital delivery, I tend to have a laptop connected to a projector, which projects on the screen at the front of the classroom that's connected to a set of speakers so we can hear the voiceovers. The digital delivery can also be used with smartboards if you have a smartboard in your classroom, or you can get a projector type setup as I just described. But if we click on Before You Borrow.
When my friend's car broke down, I owed him $300. Then my friend, the car, and the money all drove away, never to be seen again. A total disaster. But it did teach me a very important thing about lending. Trust. You see, lenders will loan you money if they can trust you to pay them back. So in the next few screens, we'll show you how to earn the trust of banks and credit card companies so you can establish and build good credit. That way you have the flexibility to borrow money when you need it.
So when our coach gets done speaking, we're at a natural pause point. I can then talk about the other information on the slide, get this information to my students. Sometimes there will be a note that we can emphasize with our students, and it just says some basic vocabulary. Those who lend you money are called lenders or creditors, and the money you owe is called debt. When we're ready to go forward, we've answered questions, we can go to the next page. Here it looks just like the printed documents, and we have some terms, or we have some terms on the left-hand side, and we have some definitions on the right-hand side. And we can work with our students. If we have this on the smartboard, we can drag and drop these to where they go and say a credit score is a numerical rating lenders use to make loan decisions. APR is the total cost of credit. Credit is the ability to borrow money when you need it. And installment credit is equal payments over a fixed period of time. But as you work with your students now, we can drag and drop those in the order that they think is best. We can hit submit. If they're not the correct answers, the program will let us know that. We can use that as the teachable moment and help get that information to our students. On the bottom right of the program, we do have easy to use controls. We have a pause play feature. So if you're asked a question and the coaches are speaking, or if you need to pause the presentation, you can do so here. We can go backward to the beginning of the topic. We can go backward to the previous page, or we can go forward one page or forward to the end of the topic. And so we've tried to make this easy to use in the classroom. We've tried to make this to where they are learning this instructor driven as you as the teachers presenting it to them, but they can also go home and have this individually driven, just them and the hands-on banking program. If I want to go within another topic within credit or another lesson within All About Credit, I can hit this drop-down box at the top left and then go to any other section within the All About Credit topic. If I want to go to a different topic within hands-on banking, I can hit Course Index and obviously go to any other topic within the young adults curriculum. We have a couple of minutes. Let's just go to a younger audience. We'll go down to kids. You can see here I have my hands-on banking icon. If I click this, it will take me, as I mentioned, back to the main home page. Here, if we click into kids, we'll see that the navigation, the look, the feel, the strategy, the implementation is the same as young adults. Just the audience that we're working with has been down to the 4th and 5th grade level. Here we have our space alien Zing. Zing is from another planet. He didn't understand our concept of money, but now he has it figured out, and he's here to help teach our kids about money. You can see from a dashboard standpoint, it's the same as what we had with young adults, so it's very familiar. If I click this map icon, it will always bring me back to this main home page. Even when we're dealing with 4th and 5th grade students, we still talk about the concept of credit. If I click into one of these, it will then launch the actual program.
Here we are at the doors of credit. Let's see if I remember the password.
And so here, what we're looking for from a password standpoint is the key to credit is responsibility. When I click on this, it will then allow us to look at the different topics within credit for our 4th and 5th grade students. So we can learn what is credit. We'll just take a moment and hear what is credit according to Zing.
Have you ever heard the word credit? Do you know what credit means? Credit just means borrowing money. To understand it, think about this. When you borrow money from a parent, guardian, neighbor, or friend, you usually promise to pay it back at a certain time, right? They trust you to keep your promise. But what happens if you don't pay the money back? Would you expect your friend to lend you money again? I bet not. You see, credit is like trust. You have to earn it from people. So I bet you're wondering, what does credit have to do with banks? Well, let's take a look.
And then we could continue the lesson if that's where we wanted to go next, or we could go to any other section within this topic or any other topic within the hands-on banking program. So we've had a quick overview of the program, how you can use this with a projector if you're using the digital delivery with speakers or via your smart boards if that's what you have in your classroom. As we've spent time going through the program, what I'd like to point out again, and we touched on it just at the beginning, was there's been no promotional push of Wells Fargo products. There's been no promotional push of any services. There's no point where we ask a student to record their own personal information or their social security numbers, phone numbers, addresses. So there's no data mining going on with the hands-on banking program. This program is part of the Wells Fargo Foundation. It's just our community outreach tool that we use and that our bankers can use when they volunteer in the community, or that teachers and nonprofit organizations can use with their students or their audiences. So we try to make this strictly an education-based program. Hopefully you'll be able to find a place for it in your classrooms. And if there's questions, we'd be happy to help now in the future when you're using the hands-on banking program. And Hilary, I think that wraps me up.
Very good, Mark. I appreciate it. I'm looking for questions from our group now. I didn't ask before, but how many of you, by that raise of your hands on that little button there, how many of you have used the hands-on banking program before? All right, so just a small number of folks that have used it before. So anybody have any questions or wonder how they might be able to use the program or anything that they want to ask Mark before we move on? Getting some thank yous here, Mark, and some great information, and others when teacher says that they use a different program and she's not satisfied with it. This one looks better, so I think you've got a convert there. And others saying they're looking forward to giving it a try and using it in their classroom. So I'm not seeing any specific questions. Lots of folks saying they're looking forward to using the site. All right. Well, thank you so much, Mark. I appreciate your participation and your partnership with us tonight. We appreciate you being on. You're in a different time zone, so it's not quite as late for you, but it is definitely beyond your usual business hours. So we appreciate your willingness to be with us this evening.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me on the call, and good night all.
All right, we're going to transition here to the next portion of our program. I'm going to provide a little bit of information for folks on our new model curriculum that we've come out with and have officially launched now on financial education here in the state of Pennsylvania. So I'm going to lower everybody's hands now and ask folks to raise their hands again to see, has anybody gone on to the Standards Aligned system for SAS and taken a look at the new financial education curriculum that's available yet for the state? All right. Well, good. I've got, I think, 4 or 5 hands that have gone up, a few more going up. Good. So some of you may be familiar with it. Some of you, or a lot of you, this will be new. So I'll just breeze through a couple key aspects of this and tell you something that's very new just as of today. So those of you who are familiar with some of this, hang tight. I've got some new information to share with you in just a few minutes. So first of all, for those of you who aren't aware, we've been working over the past 2 years now to put together a model financial education curriculum for schools in Pennsylvania. As you know, we don't have standalone standards in personal finance, but we do have a lot of personal finance embedded within other content areas, whether it's economics, family consumer science, business, career information technology, career education and work, and of course the ability to integrate, especially at the lower grade levels, with language arts and math. So we brought together a couple of different teams of teachers, and one of the first things that we did was sort of try and come to an agreement about the what. What is it that you should teach in Pennsylvania for personal finance across the grade levels? And so the first component, this model curriculum, is the what. So we've identified what we want students to know and be able to do long-term down the road. We have identified 6 big ideas that come under financial education. And with each of those big ideas, then we've identified essential questions for each. This, for most of you, probably are very familiar with the Understanding by Design curriculum framework. It follows right along with that format. And this is now available on the Standards Aligned system. In addition, we've taken each of those big ideas and essential questions and identified key concepts and competencies at all grade levels, from pre-kindergarten all the way through 12th grade, and where that aligns to the standards in the 4 categories that you see here. Economics, FCS is family and consumer sciences, CEW is the career education and work, and BCIT is the business computer information technology standards. And so we have this at each of the different big ideas. And then we have another document. The third document is a little bit shorter. It does not have those competencies, but it has the rest of those items. All of this can be found from the homepage. Actually, right now, the financial literacy curriculum is actually the featured content on SAS right from the homepage. But when that goes away and when something else is featured, you can always find it here under the curriculum framework and then the personal finance model curriculum. And that's where you'll find those 3 documents. Now, again, this is the what. And to get to the how, you have to dig a little bit deeper in SAS. We don't want to give students, as particularly our secondary students that might be interested in sort of getting the answer keys and figure out where you're going before you get there, access to those. So the rest of that is going to live on the back end of SAS, and I'll show you where and how to get to that in a minute. But this is where we get more into how it is that these should be taught. And so in pre-K to grades 8, we're looking at the integration into math, language arts, social studies, classroom management with very clear grade by grade delineation. So we have, for example, the grade band summaries that show from pre-K to 2, 3 to 5, 6 to 8, and then the high school capstone course, what should be covered in each of those grade bands. And then breaking it down further, what specifically can be done in pre-kindergarten, kindergarten, grade 1, 2, et cetera, all the way through 8th grade, and then again that capstone course at the high school level. Speaking of that capstone course at the high school level, we've done a lot of work and had another team that worked very hard last year to develop a model personal finance course. This is a 1-semester course designed to be taught over the series of a traditional 1-semester time frame. We have a strong preference for it being taught in the 11th or 12th grades, where students have, at that point, started to, in many cases, have a job, started to experience what it's like to have to fill up a gas tank, pay for car insurance, those kinds of things that make it more applicable to those older levels. Here we've transitioned those big ideas into 6 modules. So we have 6 modules and suggested timeframes for each one. Again, we have the big idea and the essential questions, and then we provide a module overview and objectives, all tied to the standards, misconceptions and proper conceptions, those concepts and competencies and vocabulary, And then where we really get into the heart of things is identifying assessments and elements of instruction or succession strategies, where we point you directly to existing lesson plans that are free of charge. So things from the NEFI high school financial planning program, Taking Charge, the IRS's Understanding Taxes, all sorts of different resources that we've identified that you can pull in. One of the things that I always like to say is that there is no one size fits all. Your students in your school district and in your school may have different needs than somebody else. Students, if you have kids whose parents are using those alternative lenders and payday lenders and check cashers and others that Judge France was talking about earlier, they might have different needs than students who are very familiar with mainstream financial institutions and whose parents all have stockbrokers. So we encourage teachers to take a look and figure out what's going to work best for them. But we've given you a lot of things in a very organized structure in which to begin to do that. We've made interdisciplinary connections as well as suggestions for differentiation and pulled in lots of other additional resources. So from SAS, you'll log in. If you don't already have a login, you can get a login for free. And then you go into the Teacher Tools section and then Curriculum Mapping. And under Curriculum Mapping, you'll see the personal finance frameworks there side by side with English Language Arts and with math. And if you click then on one of the modules down below, now you'll see these other links here underneath the text include a lot of that stuff that we talked to. The first two are the ones that we included in the previous section that's out on the front part of SAS. But we have these grade band summaries, the grade level summaries, etc. And then down below this blue bar, is where you'll find each of the modules. So module 1 on money management, module 2 on earning income, and so forth and so on. And this is what one of those looks like when you pull it up in SAS. Now you do have the option here to print it. You can actually import it into Excel. You can save it to your account on SAS, and that's a great way to do it. Everything here is hyperlinked, so any of the activities, even the standards, all of it is hyperlinked. But the other way to do it, I know if you're like me, I'm still one of those who likes to have a hard copy of things. So the new and exciting thing that I wanted to share with everybody, and again, this is new as of today, being out there and available, is that you can get a PDF version of all of the modules that's been formatted for print. And you can, if you aren't already a member of the Financial Education Professional Learning Community on SAS, you can join that professional learning community. And when you do so, and that's back in the Teacher Tools section under My Communities, you can join the financial literacy community, and you can download it there. Or if you're having any problems with that, I'm happy to walk you through it, or I can also email it to you directly. We aren't going to be putting that out on the makingsensepa.org website because, again, we want it to be that password protected back sort of, behind the safety zone, I guess you might say, to make sure that this is something that's a teacher tool and not a student tool. So I'm going to pause there for just a second and see if anybody has any questions right now. Anybody have any questions on the model curriculum? I know I sort of flew through that pretty quickly. Right. Here is what that looks like on the back end, the financial education learning community. You can see right now we have about 84 participants, and I'd encourage you to join with us on that. All right, we have a question here about how do we join the financial literacy community. What you're going to do is you're going to go into SAS and go into the Teacher Tools section and navigate through to the My Community section. And actually, I'll finish up the slides and then I can show you live here in a moment exactly how to do that here in just a second. Any other questions that anybody has? All right, we have a question. Is this required to be taught by school districts? Susan, that's a great question. So right now, certainly the standards that are part of Chapter 4, so that includes all of the economics and family consumer science standards and all the rest of those that are listed there, are required to be taught by schools. So somewhere in the school, they're supposed to be teaching all of those standards to every student. Right now, there isn't necessarily a requirement per se to teach a course in personal finance. However, that said, I can tell you that there is legislation that was introduced last session, and my understanding is that there is legislation forthcoming both in the House and in the Senate here in Pennsylvania that would make a course in personal finance a graduation requirement. So I think there's going to continue to be more attention paid to this, and certainly something that could be forthcoming down the road. For those of you who are already teaching a course, I've had a number of folks say, well, I already have a class, how can this help me? It's a great tool to just sort of compare and contrast what you're doing and compare it to what others are doing. One of the things that was fascinating when we brought our teachers team together is we said, what is everybody teaching? And once we came up with the 6 big ideas or the way we were going to slice this pie, we had all the teachers put on Post-it notes each of those 6 categories or those 6 modules, and then list the order that they teach them in. Everybody does it a little bit differently. So the interesting thing is that some people need to cover different things. I know, for example, in some schools there's a whole separate course on careers, and so they don't cover the earning income piece nearly as much. But I encourage you to take a look at all of it and say, what are you doing? What aren't you doing? Where might there be opportunities to strengthen what it is that you're focused on? Another question about the instructor and what type of teacher certification will be needed. So right now in the state of Pennsylvania, there's technically 4 different certifications, actually more if you consider those that are grandfathered in, that are eligible to teach personal finance. And it's all a matter of local control and exactly how the course is established. So most often we see the courses taught either in business computer information technology, and business ed certified teachers. There's lots of old versions of that certificate still hanging around that also are allowed to teach personal finance. Same thing with family and consumer science. And then we have the various versions of the social studies, citizenship certification under the auspices of economics. And then we also have a growing body of math teachers that are teaching this course. In particular, there's a new textbook out there on financial algebra, and we have quite a few school districts who have embraced the concept of teaching financial algebra classes, really ramping up in a lot of cases what in some cases used to be a business math course, but really focusing now in on the personal finance aspect. So lots of great questions. I hope we answered most all of them, but if you have any others, feel free to post those as well. Want to make sure that I thank and acknowledge our teachers that served on our model curriculum and high school course development team, as well as those that worked with us on the K-8 integration project. And also our support team from the Department of Education was a great team of folks that made all of this possible. All right, and with that, I am going to end our recording. For those of you who are watching the webinar, we thank you for participating. And for those of you that are live, I'm going to show you in just a moment how to get your Act 48 credits. So hang on just one moment.